After returning to the points-paying positions during the Belgian Grand Prix weekend, Yuki Tsunoda expressed his happiness. This was Alphatauri's first success in 8 races. Tsunoda had a very competitive start to 2023, despite early season performance concerns at Alphatauuri. He pushed for points with P11 results in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia before outperforming himself at the Australia and Azerbaijan rounds that followed. However, at Spa-Francorchamps, the driver and team made up for it with a solid run to 10th, erasing the memory of the challenging sprint race the day before, in which Tsunoda was the last to cross the finish line in 18th. First of all, the team did a fantastic job, said Tsunoda post-race. The car was flying. The pit stop was really, really quick. I think everyone did a good job, especially Bicester side in the factory in the UK, and also in Italy. Obviously, for myself, I'm happy to be back in the shape I had in the first half of the season. The beginning, I would say. Especially the last 2 times there was opportunity to score points, but unfortunately I couldn't score points. Obviously, I knew that I started a little bit. My performance slightly went down, slightly went worse since Barcelona probably, and obviously a lot of limitations also for things I recognize, the amount of things I have to improve. But again, I want to keep it all clean and keep it all together, especially today. I was happy, definitely, and feeling ready for the second half of the season. For the squad located in Faenza, the Japanese driver scored all 3 points. Daniel Ricciardo, however, is a hard colleague for him. Ricciardo has now participated in 2 Formula 1 races for Alphatauuri. When he returned to Formula 1 in Hungary, he outran Tsunoda in qualifying and the race right away. But in Belgium, the Japanese driver dominated, placing first. In the World Championship, Ricciardo, 34, still has 10 races to reach Tsunoda. After seeing the Australian perform well in the RB19 during the Pirelli tire test at Silverstone, Red Bull Racing has high hopes for him. Of course, Ricciardo will need to get used to the AT04, but once he does, what will he be able to do? Without a doubt, it has been quite challenging to win games with the current Alphatauuri. We will be able to judge Tsunoda's skill level more accurately because, as was already mentioned, Red Bull still holds Ricciardo in high regard. The outcome of the race between the 2 Alphatauuri drivers may still be crucial for a potential Red Bull slot in 2024. Even if Perez flops terribly in the second half of the season in the RB19 alongside Max Verstappen. Who will ultimately succeed then? Will Daniel Ricciardo shock everyone with his surprise comeback, or will Yuki Tsunoda finally be making an impression in his 3rd season? The current standings in terms of race finishes are 1-1. But the Belgian Grand Prix left Ricciardo looking far worse than Tsunoda did in the Hungarian Grand Prix. However, Daniel Ricciardo claims that despite failing to earn points for Alphatauuri in the Belgian Grand Prix, he does not want to become too discouraged. With only the first practice session to fine-tune the setup, Ricciardo's second F1 outing with Alphatauuri proved challenging. He was forced into a sprint weekend that was impacted by the weather. A track limits infraction at Eau Rouge cost him his best time in Q1, which worsened the situation and sent him down to 19th on the starting line for Sunday's main event. He gained inspiration from a respectable performance to 10th place in the sprint on Saturday on the slick track. He made solid early progress in the dry Grand Prix, but on the day his colleague Yuki Tsunoda shined by fighting inside the top 10 and earning the final point, he ended 16th. The Australian was outmatched by Yuki Tsunoda. Ricciardo spoke with the media after the race. "I felt quite, let's say, limited today in terms of pace," said Ricciardo when asked about his race. "I think even in clear air I was struggling a lot. Honestly, just getting the front end, all through the middle sector, all the high-speed sections, I was just washing out. It was probably not that we weren't turning the tires on, but probably just not producing enough grip. And then I was sliding and overheating really quickly. In clear air, we didn't break away from the pack. We couldn't. It felt like they were able to get more out of their tires early. So then I was normally getting overtaken, while we all had fresh tires. And then when it settled, I'd have a bit better pace, but stuck behind them. And then, obviously, we know that's not good for tires as well. So a bit of a tough race." In comparison to rival drivers, Ricciardo acknowledged that his current tires and lack of understanding of his car played a big part. "I'm sure there's a little bit of that, but yeah, I still feel like we missed a little bit. I'm sure it's a bit of both. In saying that, I'm glad again I got the race distance. A lot to learn, a lot to feed back to the team. I saw Yuki got 10th, so it looked like he had a decent race. So try to learn a bit from that as well. It's just tough in a race when you're not really making progress, and that's where you try a few things, but sometimes it doesn't work, or you lock up, or you have a moment, explained Ricciardo. So you kind of just feel like, all right, today's maybe not the day. But 9 days ago, I hadn't driven this car, so when I put everything into perspective, I think we're okay. Drivers are typically switched during the summer break for in-season transfers, but Ricciardo thinks the extra 2 races before the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort at the end of August will be helpful for him while on loan from Red Bull. When I got the call-up, in my head I was like, okay, I thought they would probably just wait for the summer break, Ricciardo said. But I am actually really glad that I got these 2 races before the break because it gives me something to certainly think about, build on, and to throw some questions back at the team. We are going to get to Zandvoort much better prepared than if that was my first race, so it gives us a springboard into the second half of the season. For me personally, I know where my fitness is at, so I can work on that during the summer break. While everyone is sipping pina coladas, I'll be in the gym. Everyone else will be doing much more partying than me, especially Pierre Gasly after his podium in the sprint. But I'll be in the gym and having much less alcohol than everyone else. Helmut Marko offers excellent news for both Sergio Perez and Daniel Ricciardo, stating that the Australian has a chance to return to the senior team, but not before Perez's contract expires in 2024. If Ricciardo presents himself well, he could certainly be an issue for Red Bull Racing in the future, he told Klein Zeitung. But that will certainly only be possible after the end of the 2024 season when Perez's contract expires. Bull are hoping to use Ricciardo's experience to guide Alphatauuri out from the bottom spots on the log. Of course that helps, he said. And with his routine, he can clearly tell us what and how we have to start with the car. Marko's remarks are in response to those made by Red Bull team manager Christian Horner during a recent appearance on the F1 Nation podcast. Horner said, "Obviously our drivers are going to be Max and Checo next year, but it's always good to have talent in reserve, and I think Daniel firmly wants to be pitching for that 2025 Red Bull seat. That's his goal and objective, and by going to Alphatauuri, he sees that as his best route of stating his case for 2025. But just as Perez has competition for his spot, Ricciardo does too, with Red Bull rookie Liam Lawson hoping to cut short Ricciardo's second stay at Alphatauuri. When questioned about the young driver, who presently competes in Super Formula, Marko responded as follows. "We have been in contact with Liam. He will act as a reserve driver for both teams for the rest of the season and will complete the young driver test. So the development program is ongoing." Since Marko has all but confirmed Yuki Tsunoda would continue to hold the other Alphatauuri seat, Ricciardo is fighting for that position. Of course, that depends on the further results, but there are already discussions with our partner Honda. "You can assume that it will happen if you take this year's performances," he said. What do you think then? Who will win the number 1 driver position at Alphatauuri in the end? Do the 2 drivers actually stand a chance of earning a spot in the Red Bull lineup for 2024 or even 2025? Or is it possible that someone outside the Red Bull team will join? Please share your opinions in the comments section below. Please share your suggestions with us.